My next guest hates this. Every time not every time, but a lot of times when we talk to our next guest, we talk to him in the light. I don't have any songs that have missile in the title or defense, but I do have one that has a rocket man in the title. And does it take a rocket scientist to figure this stuff out? Well, yeah, it does. And I want to tell you that over the years, I've learned more about missile defense and our capabilities as a nation to defend ourselves from our foes. And I say defend ourselves with very sophisticated thing of missile defense. And joining us is our very sophisticated guest, fresh off a big appearance on Bloomberg Television, which I watched. Riki Ellison, founder of the Missile Defense Advocacy Alliance in Washington, D.C. Good morning, Rick.
Aloha. Good morning.
Aloha
Mike.
to you. You know, I was so excited when I got a press release talking about being on Bloomberg. First of all, I wanted to see if you were going to wear the gold and red of the 49ers, but you didn't. But secondly, go ahead. What was the occasion, by the way? It was a great invite.
Oh, it was great, and I was hesitant to do it because I'm a defensive specialist, and they wanted me to talk about offensive capabilities. So I reluctantly did it, but I enjoyed it, and I was wearing a little purple shirt for the first preseason game for the Vikings that night.
I know, and there's obvious reason why there are family disagreements in the Ellison home about what team is going to be in favor of, right?
That's right, but Daddy's team usually is the dominant one.
I want to tell you something. Going back to the Star Wars days when nobody really understood what President Reagan had in mind, and did we even have the capabilities of doing this thing? Let's talk about lasers for a minute, because I don't know anything about them. I do know that they can be right now, we have a worry at the airport when people point lasers at pilots' eyes, and it's awful. Is there a defensive as well as offensive application for lasers in missile defense?
Well, there's certainly a defensive capability, and we're designing that on a couple fronts. Our labs, both Army and Navy, are doing some considerable research in developing the laser and getting it more manageable, getting its ability to get in the field to do what it needs to do. We do have some deployed right now just on the Aegis ships out in the Gulf that can shoot down or just be able to send a ray of light and burn through a hull of a inflatable boat that would be would harass or attack that. So that's an experiment right now. But it is a developing technology, and I think that's where our nation's going to go at some point in time.
The interesting thing to me on that is the pinpoint accuracy that these things have. When you've told us and can remind everybody how these tests work, how quickly we can detect a threat that's coming our way, and how we can get something in the air to go bang it right on its nose and disengage it. Would we have the ability at some point in time to have laser generating signals up in the air that provide us that blanket of security?
Well, you're certainly right. We can detect and launch very, very quickly, a couple seconds with our overhead satellites. But the key here with using lasers is to be in that region or in around that place to be able to apply those lasers. So, we did this with the big 747s about 5 or 6 years ago called the airborne laser. And we actually intercepted 3 missiles from our aircraft that was being launched off the California coast, and we were able to burn a hole, speed of light, through the metal skin of the missile, blowing it up. So we've proven it, but to our point, it's too cost expensive to have operations of flying 3 or 4 or 6 planes 24/7 with that technology. We're not there yet. We've still got to make it smaller, cheaper, more safe, and get the power where we need it.
Yeah, but that's why we want to reiterate how important Barking Sands have been, and we have been in this missile defense testing, because you can't go anywhere without tests. And these tests under the best conditions are the ones that provide stimulus. I just happened to see something after I had emailed your office to ask them to make sure that we could connect this morning. I was watching this thing on National Geographic, and it's the 100 weapons that changed history. And it goes way back to catapults and, hot oil and lances and bows and arrows and all the way up forward to the attack helicopters and everything else. And the area that it left wide open was laser technology. Because, like you say, we know it's a very viable thing, but it's got to be tested. How do they you've explained to us how they test the missile defense. How do they test the laser defense? Kind of the same way?
Well, they've done it over in White Sands. They've done it out in California. They are going to look to do it at Barking Sands. That's a great opportunity because you have all those millions of miles of space to be able to shoot it. But a laser, is a beam of light, just like a sun ray. It's going to keep going forever until it hits something. So we've got to be careful of when we shoot, where we shoot, and be able to make sure that that the power of it dissipates over a period of time on that. But we've done a great job. Like I said, we've demonstrated an ability to shoot down missiles with it already. We are demonstrating now an ability to have it with our armed forces on ground, with the Army, where it can shoot down rockets and mortars and in the battlefield, 360. But again, we've got to be careful if we miss where that light goes. So that takes a lot of processing power to figure that out.
Little kids get told in school that the light that you're seeing from the sun started our way a long time ago, right?
Right.
There's a lot of things that we don't understand about Mother Nature. But it is interesting when you say that because, like if you shoot an arrow back in the day, if it missed the target, it fell down, in a few feet. What you're talking about, this stuff just keeps going like the Energizer Bunny, right? It just takes off.
Well, it's directly indicated about the power that we were shooting it out with. It's an unlimited ability. It's speed of light. I mean, the game it would be the most changing weapon of the history of the world if it was put to use in the correct way to do it. I mean, again, it costs half a cup of diesel fuel for a shot. So, compare that to, $75 million that we're spending for a missile defense interceptor on that. So you can see where the revolution can be if we put our resources into it.
How important, that's going to be my final discussion with you because of our time constraints and yours. It's all about how much we are able to set aside. It seems to me, Rick, that the ongoing confrontations that we have right now that's rekindling in Iraq, certainly in Syria, certainly in other parts of the region, there where there is so much uncertainty, that we have to be more and more aware of so many people having access to weapons of mass destruction that we don't know who they are, where they are. We have to protect ourselves from everybody.
Well, you're right on that, but I think on the bigger picture, we have to be technologically advanced over a couple of generations of our peers to stay in the position of power, stay status quo with our freedoms and with our democracy. So this kind of technology puts us way ahead of Russia, way ahead of China, way ahead of the bigger picture in the world as things move. But it also, as you know, can be used to do what we're doing in Iraq today, using laser-guided bombs with our troops being able to pinpoint exactly where these bombs can go without collateral damage, killing innocent civilians.
Yeah, that's an important question.
It's used that way as well.
I was going to say, Ricky, that's an important thing for you also to address, and that is right now there's a tremendous amount of criticism being leveled at Israel, and yet maybe sometimes, without taking a position one way or the other on what's exactly going on, you can explain that there's a lot more accuracy with some of these things than we're being told. I mean, it's not just an indiscriminate murder of women and children that these people are using for shields, but that our equipment can put harm where it's supposed to be, not just in the neighborhood.
Yeah, but as you look at what's going on in Israel, it's a defensive capability. We're not going to match. Their missiles they shoot, those rockets are $300 to $1,000 to make and shoot. Our defensive interceptors they're using are $100,000 a piece. You will never win a war or win anything matching that up. They use that with the offensive capability. What I'm saying is that the directed energy laser capability now is cheaper to use once we refine it than any offensive cost of any of it, because the speed of light, you can use it over and over and over again. And that's where now you change everything.
So that it looks like you have to throw a ton of money of it to refine it and make it work. But once it's working, it's pretty inexpensive to do.
That's correct. But there's danger with it, because if it's defensive, it can certainly be offensive.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful with that. I mean, just imagine that kind of capable pinpointing around the world. And that was Reagan's original dream, was to be able to put this up in satellites up in the sky, to be able to shoot anything coming up in space going back down. So, there's some treaties, there's a lot of things here to think through strategically once this thing gets out of the bag.
Sure. And once again, going back to that show that I saw, the one of the weapons, one of them, believe it or not, you can put aside all your attack, the Apache helicopters and all of this stuff, was a simple thing like the RPG, and also the surface-to-air missile that is portable, and that it showed back in the days of the Afghan war, the Afghans against Russia, when the U.S. started supplying the defensives with these devices that could fire off their shoulder. It was a turning point in the war. Somebody had to throw a whole bunch of money at that back in the day, too, before it got developed.
Those are the Stingers, and yes, we did. And we supplied those. Our Congress and our government supplied those to the Afghans to be able to turn the war and really put Russia back away from Afghanistan. But this is not a technology like this. Is a far more advanced technology.
Yeah.
You have to be able to have a tremendous amount of power. You have to have cooling. You have to have enough focus and diffraction, so you don't let the elements of the weather diffract the energy beam. There is a tremendous amount of investment that needs to be done. We're doing it, but it's not as much as we could to get this thing out faster than we could.
What is interesting to me, and go back to your football days here for a minute, back in the day when you were a player, and you needed knee surgery, they would have had to take you apart like Jack the Ripper with a chainsaw. Now they got not only orthoscopic surgery, but look at the advancements being made just in regular surgery with laser. I mean, this is the technology of not today, but of the future. And that's why I agree with you that it's important to wrap some dollars into it to make sure that we stay in the front.
Yeah, and I think one of the great places to wrap some dollars into it is right there in Kauai at PRMF. I mean, it's just a fabulous. They need to get more power on that island to be able to help create that. But you have probably one of the best ranges in the world to test this kind of stuff, and that should be a good investment and a good drive.
Yeah, on top of that, Rick, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a play for Kauai to be able to get defense dollars spent into their grid and into their infrastructure to have this power capability and not rely on fossil fuel to do it. I mean, there's an awful lot of upsides to this. That's why I hope that our new legislation, when we elect all these people, understand how important Kauai is, and to keep making sure federal dollars get into that program to give us that capability of testing.
Absolutely. It sounds like you had a big shakeup with your governor.
Yeah, we did. Something's
going on. You've got a little bit of a revolution there, but there may be a new way of looking at this.
Well, there is one shining, gleaming thing in the race for the first congressional district. The Democrat winner is Mark Takai. Mark Takai, of course, longtime military guy background, very, very similar to Charles DeJoux. So whoever gets elected congressman from the first has that background of appreciation of the military to take to Washington. And as you already know, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard is also a very friend. So it looks like no matter who wins the presidency or some of these elections, that we are still going to have enough certainty about what we need in Hawaii to make our case in Washington.
Yeah, and one of the great things of watching that race was the fact that you had one person that put a couple $1 million in it. You had another person that didn't even put maybe $500,000, and the one that had the least amount of money won the race. So it was democracy still speaks in Hawaii.
It was even bigger than you think. It was like 10 or 11 to 1 in the money. It was $5 million to 500,000.
But being back here in Washington, it feels so good to see that people make a difference and their vote makes a difference. It's not the money going into the campaign that makes a difference and changes voters' minds. So
amen, my
it's
friend.
Inspiration for us back here.
Let's also hope, Rick, that no matter who's elected where, that they bring commonality to Washington, and that we forget our differences when it comes time to protecting our borders and our neighbors and our allies. There's no question that we got to spend money in defense, even if it doesn't have a direct aid to the economy. It aids our mentality. It aids our ability to have a good economy.
And I keep telling you, this thing should be called the Department of Offense, not the Department of Defense, because we spend 2% on defense and 98% on offense.
So what's wrong with that numbers? Huh?
I think we got to work on that. And I think, again, Hawaii is so important because of what's happening. I mean, you saw China flex its muscles last week with the new missiles they're creating on their ICBMs. It is so important for the future of this country, and to keep us status quo is the critical part of it.
Well, I'm glad that you're in good shape and can keep going like that every battery like I'm talking about. Always a pleasure hooking up with you, my friend. Let's stay in touch.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, you bet. There you go. Riki Ellison, the founder of the MDA. Go check him out, by the way. You want to know more about this? This is the Missile Defense Advocacy Alliance.